Hey friends, this video is going to explore what the Uranus transit into Gemini may mean for you over the coming years. A lot of clients have been reaching out to me asking, hey, should I be nervous or worried? I've heard that Uranus changes things and disrupts things, and don't know where this is going to affect me, how this is going to affect me, but my nervous system is on edge. Can you please explain? So that's what this video will address. So the first thing I want to say is that Uranus has an 84-year cycle. So unless you are at least 84 years old, you have never experienced Uranus being in Gemini, where it just moved into, and where it will inhabit for the next 7 years. So this is new energy for most of us. Um, Uranus is known as the Great Awakener. It's the rebel. It is the contrarian. Uranus seeks to do things its own way, to have freedom, authenticity, doesn't want to abide by other people's rules. On a more universal level, Uranus is associated with bringing forward progress for humanity. So everything related to innovation and new ways of thinking and doing things. Democracy was a very Uranian kind of idea. Like, what? There's a ruling class, but wait, people should have a voice in their government. That's very Uranian. So Uranus is about change and the catalyst for change that actually moves things forward, right? So that we have more freedom, liberty, dignity as human beings. Doesn't sound bad, right? Now, Uranus is also the ruler of the nervous system. And it's kind of like that sudden aha moment, that sudden lightning flash of new awareness. Uranus is called the Great Awakener. It awakens us to revelation, to new ideas, new paradigms, new ways of problem solving that we hadn't previously understood or seen, and now we have clarity. So again, doesn't sound like a bad thing. However, Uranus in Gemini, Gemini is a mutable air sign. So it is the sign that is associated with the movement and flow of ideas, information, language. It already is the most sort of like ADD, ADHD of all signs, that kind of energy of like, oh my gosh, I'm curious about this, but wait, this has my attention, that has my attention, and being pulled in many directions in your mind, right? An overactive mind. On the most positive, it's very curious, it's very open-minded. Like, I want to learn, I want to explore, I want to have conversations, I want to meet new people, have new experiences, which is a beautiful thing about Gemini, but sometimes it's unable to shut down the overactive nature of it. Now you bring Uranus, which is the nervous system and the higher mind, into Gemini, and what we can expect maybe societally on a more collective level is a lot of innovation and change around how we communicate, around the modes of communication, the language that is used, how we understand and speak to each other. I've been listening to a podcast called The Telepathy Tapes. Maybe that's what's going to suddenly be revealed to us in the next 7 years, that human beings have this incredible capacity for telepathic nonverbal communication that we've sort of ignored, and now it becomes obvious. We already see AI and all of these bots and are changing how we communicate with each other, how we receive and get information, new information and knowledge. So we're going to see a lot more innovation in that. What does this mean for us on a personal level? That is really about you and where this exists in your chart. And it's also always about your choice. So when someone comes to me saying, I'm really nervous, I tend towards anxiety, and I'm not so great with change, how do I work with this energy? That is a very individual answer. I'll give some more general kind of guidelines, but this is very individual to you. First of all, where in your chart is this going to be impacting you? Is What planets do you have in Gemini? If you are a very strong Gemini person and Uranus is coming over and it's going to conjunct at some point over the next 7 years, your sun, your moon, your ascendant, your Mercury, your Venus, your Jupiter, like that's significant information to understand, because Uranus is going to be a catalyst for sudden revelation that is going to change you or how you see yourself or the world or your interactions in a way that brings you more, hopefully, more freedom, more alignment, with your own authentic self, with what you know, with what matters to you, right? Uniquely matters to you. So it's really about being aware so you could be ready and somewhat prepared for what you sometimes maybe can't be prepared for, right? Sudden changes happen, but there are things that we do, practices that we have that are preparing us for the unexpected, right? If you have a meditation practice, if you have a grounding practice, if you have a practice of reaching out to certain people in your life, friends or professionals who help you understand your options and problem solve when you are faced with challenges, you already have certain tools in place that you can then access when you most need it, even though something sort of sudden, unexpected has occurred, you are more prepared for that occurrence and can respond more gracefully. So, one question I have for you is how graceful are you with change? How comfortable can you be with change? Are you someone who resists change at all costs and you go kicking and screaming, being dragged against your will, and you don't want to change? This may be more challenging for you when Uranus comes along and wants to sweep your house clean so that you can bring in, redesign. Um, you can look at your chart and see what your attunements are based on your natal chart. If you have a lot of fixed energy in your chart, you're probably less comfortable with change and someone who really appreciates security, solidity, sticking with things as they have been, right? If you have a lot of mutable energy in your chart, you might really appreciate and have more faithfulness around leaning into and trusting change. Um, who are the people in your life who are good at change, who are more graceful, who do know how to lean in and sort of, flow with the punches? Those people might become good role models for you or mentors for you. Sit down and have coffee with someone who you say, who wow, this person has gone through a lot of transition and change in their life, and they seem to always kind of come out of it stronger, better, happier. What's their secret? Invite that person out and ask them and get some information that might help you to understand how to navigate shifts and be less afraid, less anxious about what the future may look like when it isn't always in your control. I do want to show you, okay, so just going back to the personal part of it, look in your chart, what planets do you have in Gemini? You also want to look at where Gemini is by house placement, because that's very different, right? If you have Gemini ruling your second house, which has to do with your security, your resources, your money, your value, what you value, and now Uranus is coming in and creating change in that area of your life, it may change your income. It may change your sense of self-worth or how you bring that out into the world and how others value you and see you as worthy. Um, if you have this in your ninth house, maybe you're going back to school. Ninth house is higher education and seeking wisdom, spirituality. Maybe you're, learning new wisdom traditions or spiritual practices. Maybe you're doing some international travel, with Uranus going through your ninth house, and you never expected that you would fall in love with this small city on the coast of Spain, and now you find yourself moving there for a year. That's a very Uranus kind of transit, ninth house. So you want to see where this is affecting you. And again, I do want to remind you, you always have choice. So now I want to show you some tarot, and this is really going to speak to choice. The card associated with Uranus in the tarot is the Fool. Now, when we say the Fool, we think that's something very derogatory or negative. We don't want to be seen as the fool. We don't want to be embarrassed or feel like we're idiots and we don't know anything. But the fool in tarot has a slightly different connotation. Okay. So I'm going to show you a couple of cards. And I want you just take a look at this card first before I even say anything or offer any interpretation on it. Just notice the things you see, and you can pause the video and you can jot down some keywords. What physical things, images do you notice that stick out to you? What is the feeling you have about this card? Does this make you happy? Does it excite you? Does it make you nervous? What questions do you have? If this card was offering you some advice about what it might look like to be open and exploring around the Uranus energy coming in Gemini over the next 7 years, what advice might it be showing you? Okay, I'm going to show you a different one. Same exercise. Pause the video, take a look. What do you see? What is really speaking to you in this card? Okay, so here's what I'm going to say. There are two different ways, not two different, there are probably multiple, maybe even infinite ways to be the fool. Okay. One is I'm so happy-go-lucky and trusting in the universe, and it's all going to be wonderful. And there's a very Pollyanna attitude towards risk and change, and whatever comes will come, que sera, sera. And I don't need to bring a lot with me. I just need to have a sense of faith and openness and optimism. And wherever the journey, wherever the path leads me, it's going to lead me, and I'll deal with it when I get there. That is lovely on certain levels, and also might speak to that there are some inherent dangers in that or risks in that. Like, yes, I want to be open and positive and curious about where the journey might lead. And yes, I can really come from a place of faith, but could I also maybe be a little bit more prepared? This, whatever he's got in this little sack over his, it doesn't look like much. I don't see a water bottle. I don't know if he's got food in there, a change of clothes. Did he pack his charger? If he needs to buzz a friend and say, hey, I got myself into some trouble. I need some help. It looks like he's about to walk off a cliff. Maybe he needs to also look down at the path forward and not just look up to the heavens with trust, right? There's a balance there. So can you embrace the optimism of change and new beginnings with a little bit more planning and preparedness so that you're not really a foolish fool? I think this card from the Light Seers, this one, by the way, is from the Rider-Waite-Smith. The Light Seers Tarot, I love this because she's leaning into change, leaning into possibility, leaning into what is next and new that she doesn't know. There's definitely a sense of faithfulness and trust and spiritual connection. And she is leaning towards the mystery of that. But she's also, it looks like she's tethered to something. And she's not stepping off the cliff into doom. She's more like inviting and allowing the wind to catch her hair and like, whoa, with that kind of awe. But she also seems more prepared, a little bit more secure. So what kind of fool are you going to be in this new era of Uranus in Gemini? Okay. That's the question I have. Who do you know who are strong Gemini personalities that what do you value about them? What do you understand about them? I have two sons with very strong Gemini placements, and what I love is how freaking smart they are, how they really think in a very complex way and consider all angles of things. They're not just taking the immediate thing, the information in front of them as truth. This is a more important skill than ever in the world we live in because a lot of what is peddled to us through social media, through everything is someone else's point of view veiled as if it is truth, but it may not be truth, right? Information and truth are two different things. And Gemini is always thinking, learning, considering, analyzing, reflecting, feeding it back out, having conversations about trying to expand its worldview and figure out what of all of this information makes sense, whole different perspectives. That's an incredible quality of Gemini. So maybe Uranus and Gemini for you looks like how do I change my relationship with the information that comes to me? How do I become a little bit more of an open-minded, curious, investigative, inquiring thinker, learner, teacher? What do you have to teach? Uranus and Gemini, maybe the way you're communicating, what you have to teach and talk about is shifting. So anyway, that's a lot. I do hope that that's helpful. I do want to say that for people who are very earthbound in their charts, have a lot of earth energy, Uranus and Gemini is a lot of air energy, and it can feel unsettling and ungrounding. I've spoken about this in a lot of previous videos. You want to have practices that reground you. Sitting on the earth, walking in nature, how you are putting food into your body that is healthy and healing, getting body work, all kinds of things that are, a meditation practice. But you need to figure out for yourself what helps you calm the mind, quiet the mind, slow the mind, a qigong practice, journaling, getting your thoughts out of your head so that they exist somewhere and you can stop being so restless. Our cell phone addiction keeps us restless, right? Constant stimulus. Can you shut off your cell phone 1 day a week and not use it and not go on social media? Can you shut off your cell phone a couple of hours before bed and read a book or listen to some music, but be more quiet so that you have a chance to settle your nervous system? Because that can be a challenge of this transit. So the better you can be prepared, be the intelligent fool, right? To be prepared for the journey, for the new information. But you also have to have time to digest it, to let it settle, to kind of filter out. So I hope this is helpful. I would love to help you do some exploration if you're curious about this in your own chart, how you might work with this more consciously. I'm here for that, and reach out with any questions at all. Thanks.